Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to When Tomorrow Comes. As we enter another lockdown, we hope that you're going to enjoy our continuing series of looking at the world of planning and development and sort of through the lens of some topical issues that are rising at the moment. This week, we're going to be looking at urban logistics with a bit of a view on wider logistics in general. I'm lucky enough to be joined by three of my esteemed Iceni colleagues. Got Stuart Mills. Hello, Stuart. How you doing?
Hi, Dan. Yeah, very good, thanks.
Good. Got Ian Mayhead. How are you, Ian?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We've got, as usual, Ashleigh Cook. How are you doing, Ashleigh?
Hi, Dan. Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Good. Glad you could all join us. For a bit of a summary of this week's email, which probably landed in your inbox a couple of days ago, we'll go over to Stuart, who's going to tell us what it was all about. Stuart, over to you.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I think what I was trying to sort of get at in the emails, I think it's a really exciting time for logistics, and I think particularly as we enter a second lockdown, the importance of online shopping and the deliveries associated with that have never been greater. So, associated with that comes a real demand for delivery of those products that you're buying online, and obviously that needs physical infrastructure, that needs depots, that needs and increasingly urban locations to serve the local populations. So what we're seeing a lot is a lot more, as well as the kind of out of town and the edge of town sort of larger sheds, is a lot more focus on the smaller units, sort of warehouse units, micro warehouses for delivery. And I guess that raises a number of challenges. Partly in terms of perception, the idea that, well, actually, a shed means lots of large HGVs coming down the roads, lots of delivery vehicles. So there's the issue as to how it relates to local residents, in terms of noise, vibration, air quality issues, also in terms of putting the physical infrastructure in terms of electric charging for fleets that are increasingly electric. So I think there's a huge amount that we can do in the industry to kind of explain sort of how this works in increasingly urban locations, and I think part of that is the fact that these smaller units are served by a lot more smaller vans. They're not large HGVs. There's a lot of work being done as to how this impacts residents, being a good neighbour, assessing noise, air quality, etc. A lot of the fleets say are electric, and also there's a lot more deliveries by cycles, e-scooters, etc. And the real focus of these units is they're local to the area. It's all about serving local residents, so it's not a lot of larger vehicles going out to deliver far and wide. It is very much about that sort of local delivery process. So I think there's a kind of perception that needs to be explained a bit more, and also in terms of how that works in planning terms. Obviously, we've got flexibility now in terms of Class E, but I think also in terms of use classes, is there something that should be recognising more this kind of micro depot kind of setup, rather than the assumption that Class E is just all big sheds on the edge of towns with lots of HGVs and lots of movement. So I think it's really exciting area to be in. I think there's a lot of questions and challenges for us.
Yeah, it is really interesting because, as you say, our kind of perception of distribution warehouses is, as you say, big sheds on the out of town. Ashleigh, we're all used to kind of ordering stuff online and having it delivered within a day or so. Isn't this something we should just accept and get used to? I mean, surely we need to kind of accept that as our growing online sort of retail continues, particularly as we enter a second lockdown, surely we just need to learn to accept this as a society and deal with the kind of consequences of having these distribution warehouses on our doorstep. Or are there sort of things we can do to make them a bit more palatable?
I think we do need to accept that this is a growing industry and that we are going to get more deliveries. People are shopping more online. I think Stuart touched on some of the challenges. I think that we need to accept that deliveries are going to happen more, but what we don't need to accept is that they should be having a negative implication in terms of air quality and noise and quality of living. We can do things differently. Stuart did allude to a couple of them. We can be using smaller electric vehicles. We can be using sort of bike courier services as well. And we can make the sort of hubs that are used and the journeys between them and the homes they're then delivering to a little bit smarter, shorter. So we're not having vans that are driving sort of from one borough, in London to another borough and then, to somewhere outside London as well. We need to be doing things in quite an intelligent way. I also think that something that we will need to think about and is already being thought about is just in terms of, new developments and what is expected from the planning permission and how is deliveries and servicing incorporated into that. I live in a sort of traditional sort of Victorian terrace street where, most of the day it's sort of just delivery vans parked in the middle, and then no one can get up or down. That's obviously not okay. And we can't, continue to do that for future developments. Especially given that, they're maybe going to be high density and have a lot of deliveries arriving at one front door throughout the day. So I think that's something that does need to get incorporated into future proposals. And it could even be that we have sort of small hubs that exist in pretty much every single district town centre, and that they are then connected to, residential developments within a sort of short drive from there. I don't know. I've never had to work in a logistics sort of type role, so I can't say exactly what the best solution is, but all I can say is that we need to accept that there'll be more deliveries. We don't need to accept that they'll have a negative implication.
Okay. Ian, over to you. Are these the sort of these public perception issues? Are these something that you see reflected on larger scale logistics developments and properties?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. The sort of changing perception is really important, and I think in many cases now we're finding that happening as people start to understand where their produce comes from. The big box, the attitude to the big boxes, I believe, is softening, particularly with local authorities who are being much more receptive to the benefits it offers and the need for those facilities. And in some respects, they're more popular than housing in many areas at the moment, of people who are fed up with housing schemes coming forward on edge of settlements or land promotion on greenfield sites. When you're offering a logistics offer currently, and people, I just think, are starting to understand it better. There are things to overcome, mostly that relate to visual impact and HGV movements when you're out of towns. I think there are solutions within towns which are much more easier to achieve when you talk about small vehicles, electric vehicles that you'll never get or are quite a long way from for large scale logistics facilities. But I sense the attitude of local authorities and the attitude of the public changing for the better when it comes to these facilities.
Okay. I mean, those are the sort of changing face of how the sector is working. Are there any big sort of technology disruptors on the horizon? I mean, is this all going to be obsolete for these sort of small scale urban centres? We're all going to start getting our deliveries by drones some point in the next.
Well, you've seen, I mean, Brewdog are one of the companies that they all handled their own distribution and movement of all their own products, and they have launched a fully electric fleet of vehicles that will be delivering, their products throughout the UK. And I think that it just takes sort of big companies like that to stand up and say, we're no longer accepting the status quo. We're doing things differently, and if we can do things differently, then other people need to follow. And like Ian said, you've still got those large scale distribution networks throughout the UK. It's how they get into the sort of cities and then how it's distributed from those cities to homes, and that kind of last mile delivery is changing that up as well. And I think Ian, as he'd said, doing that last mile delivery, that's probably easier to change than the sort of long distance drives, because you've got the electrical vehicle charging points, they're still limited throughout the country.
Ashleigh, I thought for 1 minute there you were going to say that Brewdog were doing beer deliveries by drone. That would be music to my ears as we enter a second lockdown, frankly. Okay, I think that's pretty much all we've got time for this week. Quite short and snappy, but I hope you found it of interest. Thank you very much to Stuart and Ashleigh and Ian, and thank you all for joining us. See you next time.